This battle is brought to you by social media, capitalism, and consumerism. On one side, we have Sydney, Amazon influencer with around 300,000 Instagram followers and over 500,000 on TikTok. On the other side, we have Alyssa, also an Amazon influencer with around 140,000 Instagram followers and around 7,000 on TikTok. Just two girlies fighting to see who will get you to buy that basic sweat set produced in a questionable manner off a random seller on Amazon. The fight for our short attention spans and materialistic minds is heating up, so let's get into it. Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we're getting into a very interesting legal battle that could reshape the influencing and content creation industry as a whole. This is the story of two Amazon influencers, Sydney Nicole Gifford Sloan and Alyssa Shiel, whose dispute over content similarities has led to a pretty wild lawsuit. Before we get into all of the details, huge shout out to this piece written by Mia Sato on The Verge. This is where I got the bulk of information for this video. She actually interviewed Sydney and Alyssa, so we have direct quotes with their thoughts on this entire dispute. So if you're not familiar with what an Amazon influencer even is, they're basically influencers whose sole goal with all of their posts is to get you to go to their Amazon storefront and make a purchase. Depending on the products that they sell, they can get anywhere from around 1 to 20% commission. So the girlies met sometime in late 2022. I don't know how exactly they first got in touch, but they did decide to meet up with each other and some other influencer who is Sydney's friend. It seems like it was supposed to be some kind of networking and girls supporting girls type of meetup, since they all know they're in the same influencing business. But things are kind of dicey since Sydney and Alyssa recount how the meetup went pretty differently. Alyssa says, "It was fine, nothing too crazy. I was a little nervous to go into it just because it was her and a friend that she already had. And I was kind of like the outsider in a sense. I'd never met either of these girls before." She also states via her attorneys that Sydney was quizzing her on strategies and techniques with content creation and made passive-aggressive comments about her being so young since she was only 19 at the time. Sydney does not recall this first meetup going poorly, and I mean, to be fair, it must have gone well enough or okay enough because they all decide to meet up again in early 2023. This time, the three of them meet up in a parking lot to take photos together. Alyssa says that she again felt very excluded by the other two girls and left the meetup with a bad taste in her mouth. She says, "I wasn't spoken to for the first hour of getting there. There were little things here and there where I was just kind of made to feel unwelcome." While Sydney and the other unnamed influencer said that they left thinking that things went well and that there wasn't anything rude about the interactions. Which honestly, why the hell would Sydney and this other influencer who's Sydney's friend admit that they were being rude to Alyssa? But that's just what they said. We can believe it or not. Sydney says about Alyssa at this point, "We had what I seemed to think was a great professional, friendly relationship. So it was blindsiding to have all of this happen, and then even more blindsiding for her to go and make these huge claims all over the place about bullying and harassment." So shortly after that second meetup, Alyssa blocked Sydney on her various social media accounts. And when Alyssa blocked Sydney, Sydney actually does notice it. She said at the time she didn't take any offense to being blocked and just attributed it to Alyssa protecting her mental health when in the influencing industry. She thought that Alyssa just didn't want to spend time comparing herself to other people, so it was nothing personal. Which to me, I think is kind of wild, because if I networked with someone in the same industry as me regarding content creation, even though I understand that comparison is really dangerous for one's mental health, if that person I met a couple times in real life and then they just blocked me after one of our recent meetings, I would be confused. Like, I wouldn't get mad or anything, but I would be confused if I really thought that our interactions together went well. Like, as much as comparison is dangerous, it's also really nice to have mutuals in the same space that can support you and understand you. So I'm just surprised that Sydney's response is really so nonchalant, unless maybe she knows that she wasn't really the nicest to Alyssa when they interacted. Around 10 months after the blocking, Sydney then gets alerted by some of her followers that Alyssa's content has been showing up on their feeds and that it looks very similar to Sydney's. The photos in the post weren't just the same vibe, but often the same exact Amazon products. It was also noted in the lawsuit that Alyssa's appearance had changed changed in some ways to resemble Sydney's. So Sydney does not seem to waste any time. She hires an attorney, she sends Alyssa cease and desist orders, and starts registering her social media posts with the US Copyright Office. Which, from what I've seen digging around online, registering social media posts with the Copyright Office doesn't really seem to mean anything. But again, that's why this entire case could change influencing forever, because while usually nothing happens, this case is still ongoing. So if something does happen, it'll be a first. In the lawsuit, Sydney accuses Alyssa of willful, intentional, and purposeful copyright infringement in dozens of posts across platforms like TikTok and Instagram. She compiled nearly 70 pages of side-by-side screenshots of both her and Alyssa's posts, where she claims that Alyssa copied either the angle, tone, and/or text, and she said that this went on for around a year. So let's take a look at some. This is one example with Sydney's post on the left and Alyssa's post on the right. They're promoting the same set of pots and pans from Amazon, which could be a coincidence. They are posted 3 days apart, which could be more suspicious or less suspicious. To me, it could be more suspicious because it's like, oh, why are you posting this right after me? But it also could be less suspicious because if we're assuming that Alyssa's copying, that means we're saying that Alyssa saw Sydney's post, ordered the same set off Amazon, and it came in 3 days' time in order for her to post these things quickly. Which feels kind of wild, but I mean, I guess Amazon Prime is the thing. Now, is it possible that Alyssa just happened to own the same set and then posted it without knowing Sydney posted it 3 days prior? I don't know the odds for all of these scenarios. I'm not a mathematician. For this one, they promoted very similar, if not the exact same phone cases. I think that white one is the same across both videos. So I did copy paste these URLs to try and find the original videos to compare, but Alyssa's isn't up anymore. I mean, honestly, here, the screenshots side by side, it's the literal same phone case, the background is similar, these are the same. In this comparison, both girls are promoting golden earrings in the shape of a bow. Something highlighted in the lawsuit is that they're both showcasing the earrings while holding their hair back with their hand, which I've seen other people do that before. I'm just hyper aware that obviously the things we're going to see as evidence are heavily biased in Sydney's favor because these are the things she's using to prove her point. So while yeah, I agree, it looks pretty suspicious, I'm trying to have a more holistic view of the situation. Another example of Alyssa copying is in these Instagram posts. Sydney posts herself sitting in the car in October. 2 months later in December, Alyssa posts herself also sitting in the car with a similar pose and just aesthetic. I mean, yeah, these posts are similar. Does that mean I think Sydney deserves to win her lawsuit based on this kind of evidence alone? Not necessarily, because I think it comes with a lot of other implications that we'll get into. This is feeling a little bit dramatic and nitpicky to me. I don't think at this point anyone's post that they do and post on Instagram is original. We're all getting it from somewhere, someone, somehow. I don't think you can claim ownership over a pose. This next one is them both promoting the same sweatsuit from Amazon with a photo of them with their hair styled similarly and the phone covering their face. Looks like they were posted about a month apart. Now, do they look similar? Definitely. Would I be able to really tell who is who without the labels? Probably not. But would I ever see the image of Alyssa and think that I'm seeing Sydney? No, I would just think that this is a very generic post that any influencer or Pinterest girly would post. It's not giving me a specific brand or person coming to mind. So I really do feel like there are layers to these accusations. I do feel like it's definitely possible that Alyssa looked to Sydney's content and did similar things, but I don't know if these similar things are things that you can claim ownership over. There's also another example submitted to the court where Sydney filmed herself trying on a cream-colored knit sweater set, and a few days later, you guessed it, Alyssa does the exact same thing with the exact same set on Amazon. Is it truly possible for all of these things to be coincidences? We'll get into Alyssa's defense later on. So Sydney charted her earnings over that time period and noticed that as Alyssa was posting more and more similar content to hers, her own earnings went down. Months that were historically her biggest earners had made much less than before. More specifically, it was making less than half of what she had expected. Which whoa, at first it's kind of wild to assume that just one other creator making similar content to you was the reason for your earnings to drop that drastically. But when you think about it, it does kind of make sense. Other influencers that have the same audience as you that are promoting the same products is going to have some kind of effect on your sales. The commission on Amazon has to go to someone, and it doesn't matter if you were the influencer that showed the product first. If anything, I feel like it actually helps to maybe be the copier, since the way commissions work is typically whoever's affiliate link got clicked on most recently is the one that gets the commission. And I feel like usually when I see an influencer promoting a product that I could be interested in, I might not click on it and buy it right away. I'll probably just move on and think about it, and maybe when another influencer pops up promoting it again, I might actually buy it that time around. So there's definitely some pros to being the copier, aka most recent one posting about whatever product. And keep in mind that while these influencers are fighting over commissions, Amazon wins out either way. So let's get into the whole looks aspect of this, because in the lawsuit, Sydney also accuses Alyssa of misappropriating her likeness. Basically, Sydney is saying that Alyssa is, or at least was trying to look like her, and has been profiting from it. Sydney says that Alyssa imitated outfits, poses, hairstyles, makeup, and the manner of speaking to produce a virtually indistinguishable replica of Sydney's likeness. And I'll be honest, you guys, before we get into this whole part, I do think it's kind of BS, but let's just look into the evidence. Now, first off, we got very similar tattoos, Sydney's on the left and Alyssa on the right. It's unclear when the timing of these tattoos were. Like, I'm not sure if Sydney already had her tattoo when Alyssa met her, but Sydney's tattoo did come first. When Alyssa was asked about the similarity, she said that the flowers represented her family members and that she got the idea for her tattoo from Pinterest, and that the resemblance to Sydney's is just a coincidence. To be fair, getting a tattoo on your arm of a flower doesn't really seem that groundbreaking. I could definitely believe that these two girls got their inspo separately, but I could totally understand how if you already thought in your head that someone is like copying everything about you, and then you saw this tattoo on top of it, you would just like completely crash out. And then next we have the hair color change. So apparently Sydney dyed her hair from black to brown in September, and then Alyssa did the same thing in December. I get that Sydney is upset over the alleged content stealing, but to say that someone is trying to literally be you for merely doing things cosmetically that resemble things you did is kind of unnecessary for me. Like, Sydney is insinuating that Alyssa did this because she's trying to appear like Sydney and steal her sales. When girl, it's not like people are buying from your storefront because your hair is brown. You can't claim ownership over brown hair. Like, seeing someone's brown hair online and thinking, oh, that looks cute, I want to dye my hair brown too, is very different from like those celebrity impersonator people who are actually profiting off of other people's likeness. Like, it makes me think of that one like page girl that pretends to be Ariana Grande. Like, I feel like that is some mental illness. This is just normal influencing people interacting with social media on the day-to-day. Now, going back to the photos we talked about earlier with the same outfits and the covering faces with the phones, Sydney is saying that in those photos, they look like similar people. Which, like, sure, you guys do look similar, but you also look like every other girly out there with the same aesthetic. Look, I don't deny the existence of Sydney's fan followers that saw those photos of Alyssa and thought about Sydney, but I don't think that that's enough to say that Alyssa is doing this to intentionally create some indistinguishable replica of Sydney. Like, it's one thing to say, oh, she can't come up with her own ideas, so she's copying my content because she knows like what works well. It's a whole other thing for Sydney to say that Alyssa is trying to literally be like her because her likeness is the thing that is like generating all of these sales. We also can't ignore how race also plays some factor in the conversation around this. Although Sydney doesn't bring up race in her initial lawsuit, Alyssa's team responds to all of these claims saying, it's difficult to fathom how someone could confuse Sheil, a Black Latina woman, with a white woman. Alyssa is pretty emotional when asked about this, and she says, as a person of color who is on the fairer side, I feel like I've never really fit in with the darker crowds or the lighter crowds. I'm too dark for the lighter crowds and then too light for the darker crowds. So it's just a weird spot to be in. And then in response to Alyssa's team's response, Sydney says, I never brought race into this, and the fact that Alyssa's side did honestly disgusts me because it's such an important topic, especially today. That is also offensive to me that you're saying I'm just a white girl. You don't know my background and my history. Their appearance has diverged since the filing of this lawsuit, so they aren't looking super similar anymore. I mean, they still have the tattoos, but their hairstyles have changed. I can understand how the tattoo can feel kind of weird if you're thinking this girl is spying on your content and copying you, but everything else from Sydney here feels a bit dramatic. And since we're on the topic of who's copying who and who did what first, can we just be so for real right now and acknowledge that neither of these girls are inventing anything new? Alyssa's attorney said it themselves that Sydney's look is not original. For that matter, on that front, neither is Alyssa's. Both Sydney and Alyssa have an aesthetic referred to as a clean girl look. A lot of minimalist designs, beige tones, neutrals. And what's funny is that we just talked about the Marlena Velez case last month. She's the influencer stealing products from Target that she was using in her hauls. I just bring her up because Marlena also has a very similar beige minimalistic aesthetic that Sydney and Alyssa have. Granted, she's not going hard with the Amazon influencer specific content, but it just shows that having the same vibe and same looking home is not criminal because no one can take ownership over it. Sydney says that Alyssa is copying her, but there's something to be said about the fact that they're also just both copying other people. Nowadays, we pretty much call anyone trying to sell you something an influencer, but remember, it is different than being an actual trendsetter. Based off what I could find, I think Hailey Bieber can be somewhat credited with the original clean girl aesthetic, and if we want to talk about beige home goals, I think Kim Kardashian comes to mind. In fact, you can't deny the Kim Kardashian inspo over all of this because these influencers are literally promoting Skims dupes on their storefronts. And I mean, who knows where Hailey Bieber and Kim Kardashian got their inspiration from, but at this level of Amazon influencer, there's almost always going to be someone else or some other thing that they can attribute their content style from. And it's interesting that Sydney is so caught up in copying and is up in arms about protecting her business brand when she often promotes dupes of designer products. I mean, we just talked about the Skims dupes for one. It does feel kind of hypocritical. Like, you're upset because someone is threatening your business by doing the same thing as you, but you're also hurting other businesses by promoting cheaper dupes to their original designs. And the sellers you're promoting have hidden and questionable labor practices. And don't get me wrong, I understand why someone would love a good dupe and how dupes can be positive, so this isn't me digging at all dupes in general. I don't actually really care if a designer bag is duped, but it's just an interesting layer to the overall discussion. So essentially, I do think that Sydney would have a point in this case if the aspects of her content being copied were actually super original. Now, how does the mysterious algorithm affect all of this? One of the defenses that Alyssa's team states is that a lot of the products that Amazon influencers promote are pushed to them by Amazon itself. Especially around sales events like Black Friday or Prime Day, creators receive spreadsheets of products on sale that could be promoted. And it only makes sense that two creators with the same niche would get the same products. Like the cream sweater set that Sydney says was copied, Alyssa says that that was on one of the Amazon spreadsheets. Now, Sydney stands firm that she handpicked all of the items that she used as evidence in the lawsuit and that she didn't rely on any Amazon issued lists to help find the ones that she said Alyssa copied, which is very interesting to me because it's possible that both of these women are telling the truth. There's a world where Sydney does find the items herself on Amazon to promote. She promotes them, puts them on her storefront. Amazon sees, hey, this item is being promoted by one of our affiliates and people are buying it. Let me recommend this product to our other affiliates in the same niche to also market. Look, I don't work at Amazon. I have no idea how their algorithm works for that kind of thing, but I feel like it's a strong possibility because if one Amazon affiliate is successfully generating sales with a certain product, Amazon doesn't care that the sales are from that one affiliate. They just want sales, period. So hell yeah, they'll get the other affiliates to recommend it too if they're getting a signal that this is a good product that people are willing to buy. And what's wild about this scenario is that if influencers are really upset about this, they should be taking it up with Amazon. But instead, we got two girlies fighting. Now, Alyssa's legal team team has moved to dismiss most of these allegations. They argue that Sydney's complaint is essentially about the similarity of their overall aesthetics, which they claim is not enforceable under the DMCA. DMCA is the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, which protects copyright holders from online theft. So basically, they're saying we're not stealing anything, it's just similar, which you can't get in trouble for because what does being similar even really mean? And technically, all of Alyssa's content is her own content. It's her in the videos, she's recording, she's editing things herself, she's creating her own storefronts, everything. She isn't literally downloading Sydney's content and then just posting it as her own. Alyssa says about this, there are hundreds of people with the exact same aesthetic, and I'm the only one that's having to go through this. It's coming across very gatekeepy, like I'm the only one that's allowed to be successful in this program. I'm the only one that's allowed to put my foot in the door. Back in November 2024, the judge partially granted and partially denied Alyssa's motion to dismiss. The judge noted that this appears to be the first case of its kind where one social media influencer accuses another of copyright infringement based on the similarities in their product promotion posts. So while it's not clear that Sydney is definitely going to win in these accusations, the fact that it hasn't been thrown out yet is interesting because it's not over. And you guys, if Sydney wins out on this lawsuit, it could be a potential game changer for everyone else in the industry. It could significantly expand copyright law by allowing creators to legally protect their visual brands and just change how influencers operate and protect their content. So should influencers be able to copyright their vibe? Personally, I feel like no, because the more restrictions you put in place, the more people are unable to create under the fear that they're gonna get in trouble for appearing too similar to another creator for whatever X reason or criteria. At the same time, I do have a lot of empathy for people getting their content stolen or copied. I've been there too with some of my content on TikTok, but I just don't think that there's a clear way to protect against those copiers without making everything super restrictive and gatekeepy. I just think it's a slippery slope that could prevent new people from breaking into content if big creators now who already have a lot of resources and are already established are able to punish people for copying certain editing styles or content topics. I feel like there's a world there where trends just no longer exist anymore. So let me know what you guys think about all of this in the comments because I am so curious. Thank you guys so much for making it to the end of the video. Please like and subscribe to support the channel and I will see you guys next time. Bye!